These are some NBA players who refuse to get better. And to start, we're going to look at Deandre Ayton. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I thought Deandre Ayton was about as safe as it gets. A guy with footwork, athleticism, good touch around the basket, and a smooth jump shot really looked like a textbook modern big. I mean, this guy was viewed as the #1 pick in the 2018 draft, which rightfully so, of course, got some criticism from people who recognized that this Luka kid was the real deal. But at the same time, there weren't many people criticizing his comparisons to David Robinson. When you watched him play, you wondered, what could stop this guy? He was going to come in and score the ball in the NBA immediately, as a great rim runner in transition and solid pick and roll target. But if he made improvements to his pick and roll defense, jump shot, and post-up game that were already decent, Deandre Ayton no doubt looked to be on a trajectory to the top of the NBA. This draft certainly aged well, with star talent like Luka Doncic, Trae Young, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. So surely the guy who's drafted before all of them turned out to be similar, right? Well, after his rookie season where he averaged 16 and 10, there wasn't any signs to the catastrophic disappointment that was soon to come. I mean, Luka demanded the world's attention with a season that won him the Rookie of the Year, but would it be crazy to say Deandre Ayton was the second best rookie that season? Under coach Monty Williams and alongside young stars like Devin Booker and Kelly Oubre Jr., the 2019-2020 Suns were full of players who seemed to be primed for a breakout season. Ayton was clearly the center of the future for this team at 18 and 11.5, but at the same time, Deandre Ayton felt yet to be unlocked. Ayton was very NBA ready. In a league that lacks physicality, those who can bring it can excel, especially at his position. And with a top 10 natural frame and ability in the NBA debatably, instantly this guy could show up, be big, catch the ball, dunk the ball, and run fast. It seemed simple, but he was so much more talented than other professional centers that this guy could fit in from the start. The only thing that it felt like Ayton was missing was what every young big man should certainly have, a seasoned point guard, and in his third season, that's exactly what he got. When Phoenix went out and got CP3. That should have been the indicator for an Ayton breakout season. Book was averaging 25 a game to take off most of the pressure, and Chris Paul is known for being one of the greatest playmakers of all time. He would be a real asset to them in the playoffs, going from guarding AD to Jokic and then Giannis in their finals run, but his season wasn't exactly anything special compared to his prior years. On any given night, he could look like the best center in the league with 25 and 15, but the 6 and 6 games were just as regular. But the real cause for concern became his attitude. Monty Williams, who was known for being a very supportive and passionate coach, benched him in a Game 7 and simply called it an internal issue. He then refused to talk to Monty and was unable to reach a contract extension, making him a restricted free agent. The Pacers tried to sign him, but the Suns would match the offer to keep him on. He'd have another similar season, but get absolutely manhandled by Nikola Jokic in the Western Conference semis. At this point, Deandre Ayton was 23 years old, with 4 years under his belt in the NBA, and statistically, or through the eye test, this dude hadn't improved his game in any facet. At 17 and 10, and consistently with shaky defense and no three-point shot, Deandre Ayton was the same player. But why should he care when he accomplished what was his ultimate goal in the NBA? Rewinding to draft night 2018, after achieving his dream to the highest degree, going #1 in the draft, Ayton made a few head-scratching comments that would prove to be indicative of the things to come. After being asked the simple question, what does success in the NBA look like for you? Ayton responded, definitely getting to my second contract. That's my success. Ayton is by no means a bad player, but through the lens, understanding that money is his primary motivator, his career makes a lot more sense. Ayton never had to play hard or really develop his game too much, given that he was talented enough to land a 4-year, $133 million contract without improving from his rookie year. And even though teams at this point certainly understand that the upward trajectory that he looked to be on is really going to be totally flat, this guy's going to land a third contract after next season, I can guarantee you. He would finally find his way out when they sent him to Portland in the Lillard trade, a team where he could be the guy and even the #1 option. But neither he knew how to thrive in that role, nor did the Blazers know how to use him, and he fell into the same slump as years prior. Sure, he's been consistent, but rather than become an Embiid type player, he's turned into more of a Daniel Gafford. In his 2 Portland years, he's averaged 16 and 11 and doesn't stand out as anything special. With under 2 free throw attempts per game as an interior scoring center, Ayton truly does not care enough to give his all out there. When he wants to be, he can dominate your everyday center, but that's where it gets dangerous, because he's gotten too complacent and doesn't look like a former top pick whatsoever. With enough talent to kill a horse, Deandre Ayton sadly has enough complacency to kill a Hall of Fame career. If you're watching this right now, there's an 84% chance that you're not subscribed to the channel, so make sure to change that for me. We're trying to hit 100K by the end of the year, and I appreciate you boys boys watching. Moving from a forgotten number 1 pick to a despised number 2. Jalen Green's PR has been in the gutter ever since he choked his team out of the playoffs in the first round. The Rockets this year have been successful because they played terrific team basketball, but even then, you've got to have a go-to guy. And for a while, it looked like Jalen Green was either that guy or was going to become that. He just finished his 4th season, but in those 4 years, he's looked like the same guy every single season. Now, I can't lie to you boys, when I saw this guy's high school mixtape, I bought in. Despite being a little small for a 2-guard, this guy's explosiveness and body control in the air looked elite as fuck. With insane natural gifts and a smooth rhythm to his game, the sky seemed to be the limit. Now, where this guy misstepped, as we seemingly talk about every video, is joining the G League Ignite. Now, I've shit on the G League enough at this point, I don't need to do it again, but just as a warning to any of you watching, if you ever get an offer to play in this shit and really don't want to go to school, just take your talents to a construction site for a year and it'll probably serve you better. Now, Green was the poster boy for this route, and came into the league as the 2nd pick and did exactly what he came in to do. He was an intriguing scorer with elite athleticism and averaged 17 points per game as the Rockets kept their rebuild going. The guy can fly and definitely can get into a rhythm. As the years have gone on, the Rockets went from lost without Harden to a playoff team once again, and the question soon became if Jalen Green could become a legit star. But no, he hasn't. Şengün turned out to be their all-star from that draft year. And although Jalen Green has technically been their top scorer, it seems like they'd rather go to Şengün in the important situations, and these last playoffs showed that big time. Jalen Green first and foremost has displayed loads of potential to be a 3-level scorer with elite finishing ability inside. Think Zach LaVine type of talent. But unlike LaVine, Jalen Green has consistently struggled to score efficiently and consistently when really that's his only job. His issues have become more prevalent, and they've caused fans to really doubt him whatsoever. First off, he came into the league skinny and has stayed skinny. He's athletic, but he can't really hold his own against the top-of-the-line defenders. His assist-to-turnover ratio hasn't been great whatsoever, and his combination of a low IQ and lack of shiftiness has been a crucial reason as to why he's been struggling. He's super talented, but he got schooled when he can't just ride his talent against seasoned guys like Steph and Draymond, against whom he disappeared for all but 1 game. And then there's his defense too. This past season, the Rockets were considerably worse on defense when Jalen checked into the game, which has been a trend every single season. Rockets fans are turning on Green, to the point where he may even need to consider asking out. But the problem is that his trade value has plummeted. Even if he were to get out, other teams may not want to give up that much for him. He's been looking eerily similar year in, year out, from averaging 17 a game to the low 20s to high teens every year since, after an increase in shot attempts from his rookie year. Jalen Green has been the same inefficient volume scorer who doesn't look to swing the rock. To call a spade, this guy's just not a winner, man. He does one thing and doesn't do it great, while dropping under 10 points in 4 of 7 playoff games. Jalen Green fucking sucks, dude. His stats wouldn't look as bad if he wasn't supposed to be the number 1 option on a top team in the West, but clearly, Houston needs to shop around for a better scoring punch, and Jalen Green needs to shop around for a better trainer. Patrick Williams fits this category just as well as anyone on the list. The 6-foot power forward came into the league as the 4th pick in the 2020 draft, and was expected to make an immediate impact with freakish upside due to his explosiveness and versatility. And with his NBA-ready body as well, he was just oozing potential. The Bulls saw young Kawhi Leonard, and fans were hoping for that too, dubbing him the Paw. And in his rookie season, he would play eerily similar to Kawhi's as well. He didn't put up the volume people had expected, but he was staying efficient, and his lack of productivity was chalked down as rookie nerves. He'd missed almost all of the next season with an injury, but instead of making a leap when he came back, he still looked like that rookie who lacked the energy people saw in him as a prospect. He was a net negative for the Bulls on offense, and while he was able to make more of an impact on defense, he just wasn't that two-way threat that teams expected him to be. While he wasn't incompetent or too chaotic on offense, he lacked aggression and that ability to turn it up another gear. And over the last 2 seasons, we've seen the exact same thing. In the 2024 offseason, the Bulls paid him $90 million over 5 years, but he didn't produce enough to make fans believe he was worth that much. Bulls fans are calling him an overpaid bust, and while some people chalk it down to the lack of successful Bulls developments over the last few years, the guy has yet to show at least an ounce of confidence. It shows how a guy can have all the physical tools he needs to be successful, but if he doesn't have it mentally, then he won't be able to get it done. He's serviceable, but he wasn't supposed to be much more than that. It got bad enough that he needed to be benched. I mean, this guy has a consistent 40% three-point shot, the frame to be a defender, a consistent role on a shit team who's begging for someone to step up, and is still dropping single-digit scoring numbers now on below 40% shooting from the field. Maybe he just needs to change the scenery, and maybe that potential's still there, but potential has a shelf life, and if he doesn't find a way to elevate his game by the end of this contract, he may not be looking at a very long career in the league. Bamba had all eyes on him after averaging a double-double and nearly nearly 4 blocks a game as a college freshman. It seemed like a sure bet to pick him to be the next elite defensive center in the NBA. He had a 7'10" wingspan, led the Big 12 in blocks and rebounds, and had a song about him went 5 times platinum. He was a walking brand before he even got into the NBA. People expected him to be a mobile Rudy Gobert who can catch lobs and shoot 3 balls. And when the Magic drafted him 6th overall, people expected him to have an immediate impact. He would play backup to Nikola Vucevic for about half a season, before undergoing some injury problems and miss some significant time in the next season. But the injury issues don't tell it all. He had every physical advantage you could ask for, but it became apparent he was at a disadvantage mentally. He wasn't on the same wavelength as many other NBA centers, lacked court awareness, but still, people chalked it down to early career issues. Through the first 3 seasons of his career, he averaged about 5 and 6 as a backup before finally getting a starting spot in his 4th season. With Vooch gone, Mo was supposed to be a foundational piece to the young and rebuilding Magic, but he really didn't impress whatsoever. His numbers went up, but only because he was allowed about 10 more minutes of playing time per game, and because Orlando finished with the worst record in the East, even his good moments were overlooked. Although admittedly riding the bench a little too hard for someone with so much potential was incompetence from the Magic, Mo Bamba wasn't doing anywhere close to the best he could to maximize his time on the floor. He wasn't a hustle guy or an impenetrable rim protector like in his college days. And even though he had stretched the floor well as he shot 38% from 3, that's not what the Magic were paying him to do. He was blocking close to 2 shots a night, of course, but hunting blocks comes at a cost. At times, Rudy Gobert's numbers have fallen in that regard, but consistently seeing field goal percentages fall around the rim while minimizing fouls at the basket is what maintains his value. Mo Bamba was more so jumping at every shot, trying to pad his block totals, while not actually anchoring the defense whatsoever. Even with that, in the lottery which scored them Paolo Banchero, the Magic would sign him for 2 more years. He'd be relegated to the bench, but as the Magic kept collecting more and more big men, Bamba's minutes would ultimately be slashed for Bol. I mean, 4.5 years in, you'd expect a guy like Bamba to assert himself, but that was the problem. He'd have a few good games where he'd stretch the floor, knock down a couple threes, and get a block or 2, but more often you'd see empty stat lines and remnants of Bamba's college self. With rotations that were piss poor, frequent foul issues, trouble guarding post players, and an inability to finish inside, this guy really didn't improve in any way to compete at the NBA level, and was frankly unplayable despite a pretty jump shot. He'd finally get sent to the Lakers, which seemed like the one place Mo could maybe excel, but after an ankle sprain, they waived him in the offseason so that they didn't have to pay him $10 million to ride the bench. He's bounced around since then, surviving on 1-year deals and 10-day contracts, but at the end of the day, he ended up being the NBA's version of a mirage. If I were a scout in 2018, I probably would have been high on Bamba too, but due to his inability to fit a single crack in his game, Mo Bamba is an enormous bust. At this point, it's like beating a dead horse, but how can you not at least include Ben Simmons? It's a bit difficult because of the constant injuries he's had to deal with, but the parts of his game he could have worked on, he just didn't. And with the ceiling that people gave him, it's just been beyond disappointing. LeBron James and Magic Johnson comparisons defined his draft process because he was supposed to be the ultimate mismatch. Too big for guards, too fast, and too skilled for bigs. And even after an entire year gone due to injury, Simmons still came out to win the Rookie of the Year by averaging 16, 8, and 8. But beneath all of that success, there was one big problem. The guy could not shoot the basketball whatsoever. Anytime he got an open look, he looked like a deer in headlights, only shooting 0 for 11 from 3 in his rookie campaign. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but because of his one-dimensionality, teams figured him out. Years 2 through 4 passed by, and while he was an all-star in all 3 of those seasons, was he really any better than he was as a rookie? In his first 4 seasons, he shot a combined 5 for 34 from 3, and after getting blamed for not taking a wide-open dunk in Game 7 of the 2021 conference semis, he came under serious scrutiny from 76ers fans, teammates, and even Doc Rivers. That would be the start of a holdout from the team that only enraged that fan base further and ended in him getting kicked out of practice, publicly criticized by Embiid, and repeated fines that were reported to be north of $10 million. He'd finally get a trade to Brooklyn, but he wasn't even close to the same player that he was in Philly. And even worse, he still hadn't fixed that fucking jumper, dude. Since then, it's been a downhill journey for Simmons. Every offseason, it feels like someone's posting on social media that Simmons is working on his game or developing a 3-point shot, but 2 3-point attempts in just 108 games shows that he has either not done that or just doesn't give 2 shits. And when you pair that with a degenerative back, you're left with a guy who had all of the physical tools to be an all-time great, but at the same time, an unmotivated player who couldn't elevate his game to compete compete with the best. Now, Andrew Wiggins' story hasn't been as straightforward. Like Simmons, he came into the league as the #1 pick and won the Rookie of the Year to become the so-called future of the franchise for Minnesota. In the next season, he upped his game to average about 21 a game and was the clear-cut #1 perimeter option. But his game quickly became stagnant as he was forced to create mediocre, low-efficiency shots to get buckets. A bit like Ayton, Wiggins had all the physical gifts he could ask for, with bounce that very few could top, and a smoothness that made him one of the biggest prospects of all time. With a skill set that had a foundation laid, Wiggins quickly halted the development. He was expected to blossom into a top perimeter defender given his athletic gifts, but very quickly it became very apparent that he wouldn't be able to be an elite two-way player, mostly because he really didn't want to. By his third season, he was averaging 23.6 points per game, and although there were some breakout 40-point games, at the end of the day it didn't matter as the Wolves finished 31-51. I mean, even with Zach LaVine and Karl Anthony Towns playing well, this team was young and exciting but never really felt like a team, more of just a talent collective. It didn't help that LaVine was running lots of point guard, but Andrew Wiggins was out there not swinging the rock, shooting inefficiently, and not showing an effort defensively. They were trying to out-talent teams. Come 2017, even with a real point guard in Jeff Teague and a veteran leader in Jimmy Butler who can guard the best perimeter players and doesn't mind deferring to teammates, Wiggins couldn't score the ball efficiently in the flow of the offense, dropping into the low 40% range shooting the ball. After 5 seasons of the same shit every year, they sent him to Golden State, which would be the best thing to happen to his career. At first, people saw it as a salary dump for Minnesota, but if the Warriors realized that if Wiggins could get put in a situation where he was the 4th, maybe 3rd scoring option, then he could focus on becoming an elite defensive presence and actually contribute to a successful team, which is exactly what happened. Playing alongside Draymond, he became an integral part of that defense, bringing some fresh blood that team desperately needed. Throughout the couple of years after getting sent to Cali, Wiggins became an all-star starter, an NBA champ, and had thoroughly revived his career. Sure, he wasn't a superstar, but he had done more than enough for fans to realize what made him valuable. In the case of Wiggins, after fitting the mold perfectly as a guy who refused to get better, we certainly saw a different face of him on the Warriors. Did his skill set all of a sudden evolve? Not necessarily, but through applying yourself fully into a winning system you believe in, rather than trying to get yours on a losing franchise, it's crazy how you can see your game transform. By the time he was sent to Miami for Jimmy Butler, Warriors fans had grown to love him, and weren't exactly happy that he was the one that had to go, which shows how far he's come from his Minnesota days. Now, Frank Ntilikina was a puzzling prospect. This guy was really hated on for not being Dennis Smith Jr., but really that just takes away from how fascinating of a prospect he really was. This guy was a 6'4" point guard with 7'1" arms. That's fucking crazy, dude. He had optimistic Knicks fans excited because of his elite size and athleticism at the point guard position. And after already spending some time professionally working on his craft, he had inherited a high basketball IQ and a pass-first mentality. Even LeBron was high on the Belgian, calling him a very cerebral basketball player and an advanced defensive star. He was young too, but with his youth, there was going to be some parts of his game that needed to be developed. First off, he had the dribble package that belonged in the 1970s and couldn't shoot the ball for shit. The Knicks seemed to be all in on him due to their point guard being 34-year-old Jarrett Jack. Defensively, he was as advertised. He could guard multiple positions, and his 7-foot wingspan allowed him to snag loose balls and rack up steals. But the NBA doesn't have a place for a point guard who can't lead an offense, and that's what he needed to work on. Averaging just 6 and 3 as a rookie, he got some random praise from fellow NBA players that kept coming in. Ramon Sessions said he reminded him of young Kyrie Irving, which made no sense, but the thought counts, I guess. He'd show out for the 2019 FIBA World Cup, helping lead France to a 3rd place finish, and will get the starting nod to start the season. His defense was showing even more improvement, but he still couldn't shoot the damn ball, which would get him benched for Elfrid Payton midway through the season. He would end up becoming a free agent as the Knicks refused to re-sign him, but at the time, it looked like his career was far from over. He was just 22 years old, and his defense was very solid, but if you aren't developing a shot in the NBA with professional coaches around you in this day and age, you're going to put yourself in a dangerous situation. Point guards that can't shoot go extinct in this era. Ntilikina was not only weak in that regard, but had a pretty empty offensive bag in general. He spent a couple years in Dallas before signing on to play 5 games with the Hornets, and has officially gone back to play in Europe, where his playstyle may at least be somewhat desired. Now, no one really expected Gary Trent Jr. to be the 18-point per game scorer that he was in his 4th season playing. The one-and-done guard from Duke went 37th overall in the 2018 NBA draft, and was stuck in the G League for most of his rookie season. In his second year, he'd see a bit more runtime, but when the NBA went to the bubble, Trent was one of those guys who just took it to a whole new level. In the regular season bubble games, he averaged 17 points per game while shooting above 50% from 3, and people started to realize that he might be a legitimate NBA scorer. But he was still going to need to prove it when the teams went back to their own cities, because there were a lot of guys who went nuclear at that time. People wondered if he was for real, but the Raptors certainly thought so, trading for him midway through the next season. In his first full season, Trent had a career year. He averaged 18 a game, stole the ball at a very high rate, while turning the ball over at a very low one. I mean, that's a good season no matter how you look at it for a G League call-up. He was the third scoring option for a playoff team and was a legitimate threat to heat up like a microwave, hit 6 threes, and occasionally drop a 40-piece. People saw him as a fairly underdeveloped guard and expected him to keep that same production. But 2 seasons after his breakout year, it was back to reality for Trent, who averaged just under 14 a game. He went from a surefire starter to being in the starting lineup just some of the time, and off the bench in others. The issue with Trent was that he wasn't staying consistent on a game-to-game basis. He was no longer the third option, but instead a solid role player most of the time. When his shots weren't going in, he wasn't contributing enough on the defensive side of the ball. He turned into a black hole on offense who was dragging his past success from season to season. He'd ended up taking a considerable pay cut to play for the Bucks this past season and actually flourished in the role that he was given, which was an efficient scorer off the bench. Normally, that would be more than enough for a player, but people tend to forget just how high the Blazers and the Raptors fans were on him, and how they believed that there was a chance that he could turn into much more. The NBA is full of guys who can get hot, but the ones that stick are the ones that evolve, and Gary Trent Jr. is still vibing in the same lane that he was 4 years ago and needs to get out. Cam Reddish came into the league with a sky-high ceiling due to his ability to use his versatility to guard most positions and his 3-level scoring. He was part of one of the most exciting college teams we've seen in a minute, which included himself, Zion, and RJ Barrett. Cam was weird, man, because everybody who's played this guy seems to share the opinion that he was one of the coldest prospects in the country. But when put on the biggest stage at Duke, this guy had a total stinker of a season, failing to fit in as the third option on a team, which certainly is a poor trait to have making the leap to the NBA. He started off his young career in the worst way possible, going 1 for 18 from 3 in his first 5 games, but would see improvement as the year went on and as he shifted to more of a bench role. He finished the season with 10.5 points per game, but on 38, 33, and 80 shooting splits. But with a strong finish to the season, many Hawks fans shifted their mindset about him from being a straight bust to a two-way rookie who had potential once again. But Hawks fans wouldn't get a fair sample size of Reddish due to an Achilles injury in the next season, and after becoming increasingly unhappy in Atlanta, he wiggled his way into a trade in the year after that. He simply wanted more playing time, and he felt like there was too much competition within the Hawks depth chart for him to get it there. There were signs even before the trade that his time was coming to an end. Although he was shooting at career high efficiencies, his defense was often lackluster, and his subpar attitude and basketball IQ prohibited him from fitting into the role this team had for him. But playing for Thibodeau in New York, who was notorious for running extremely tight rotations, would be a shot to Reddish's career, as he went from playing about 23 minutes per game to just 14. But it's not like he was fighting for a spot with all-stars, he was fighting for playing time with Alec Burks and Quentin Grimes. But the main issue was, Thibodeau didn't even want Reddish at all. He was hoping to get a bigger role in New York, as he consistently struggled in a smaller one. But the grass isn't always greener on the other side, and his unwillingness to conform to his role in Atlanta was the worst thing that he could have done at the time. The burden of the potential that he brought into the league was too much to carry for Reddish. And in a league where you need to find your own niche to succeed, Reddish certainly struggled to find his. He'd get moved a couple more times before ending up in Los Angeles, but would get waived before the playoffs to make room for other roster moves. It doesn't really make sense for a guy like Reddish to struggle this much and fail to find a role in the league. Surely there are teams that would be willing to have him aboard, and if he can buy in with his athletic frame and natural abilities, he can become a valuable role player to the right roster. The issue is that he hasn't improved shooting-wise whatsoever. Shooting at around 28% from 3 this past season, hasn't established himself as a lockdown defender every night, and can't generate offense as he averages damn near as many turnovers as assists. This kid is still only 25, so I'm not too worried that he's going to find another team, but you can't stay in the NBA by just bouncing around teams and failing to develop further than your rookie self. Unlike Reddish, Rui Hachimura has been able to carve out a role for himself within the Lakers organization. When the Japanese forward averaged 13.5 points and 6.1 rebounds per game as a rookie, it looked like he was one of the most underrated up-and-comers in the game. He went from being a college freshman at Gonzaga who didn't know a bit of English to an All-American dropping 20 a game, and became both a walking marketing opportunity for NBA teams, but also a player who had a chance to become a legitimate star in the NBA. Let's be clear, Hachimura has put up an NBA career that most players can only dream of having, and has legitimately improved in some aspects of his game. But there were so many moments and countless visions that people had for Rui that haven't been fulfilled. Year 2 came by and Hachimura had nearly an identical season, with the exception of some shooting improvements. His 3-point shooting jumped from 29% to 33% and finally to 45% come his third season, but his minutes started getting cut, which didn't really make sense as he was shooting the ball better on a bad Eastern Conference team. But as his fourth season started, his development stalled heavily. He wasn't even a part-time starter and couldn't get any minutes over Corey Kispert. He couldn't stay consistent, even though he had shown flashes of a legitimate scoring threat. One game he'd score 2, and the next he put up 25. His one shining moment that season came when he tied his career high in points with 30 in his last game that he would have with the team before a trade that sent him to the Lakers. It took him a while to get acquainted in LA, but even though the Lakers would get swept in the conference finals, Rui was able to stay in double digits in each of the 4 games. He'd finally be able to work into a new starting role and find some of that third season magic that he had once again, shooting the rock above 40% from 3 and 50% from the field. His consistency problems seemed to be solved in LA, but he wasn't a consistent 20-point scorer that his career looked like it could possibly be. Instead, he served as a placeholder around LeBron and AD, and now Luka in Los Angeles, as that team struggled to find the right balance in order to win a title. He's been able to solve his extremely flat shot and turn into an efficient shooter once again, while at least finding a role on the defensive end thanks to JJ Redick. But just as he has with the Japanese national team by averaging 22 points per game against some of the best talent in the world, in a perfect situation, Rui could be doing the same in the NBA. If he could have just stayed consistent in his development from the get-go, rather than struggling in Washington before finding a legitimate role in Los Angeles. Killian Hayes has turned into one of the biggest laughingstocks in the league after an unsuccessful test run in Detroit. But before he came into the league, there was genuine buzz and excitement around the 6'5" point guard with silky handles and advanced passing instincts that had been showcased professionally overseas. It was a regular case of a young kid with clear potential who just had a few parts of his game which needed work. He struggled to get past old white dudes in Europe off the dribble and needed to develop his all-around scoring game. Sure, he was a good passer, but that doesn't take you as far as it used to in the league. Year 1 flew by because of a hip injury, which put a halt to an already mediocre season where he turned the ball over 3 times per game and shot the ball at incredibly low rates. He was able to fix some of his turnover issues in the next season, but his scoring didn't get any better, which caused serious worries around the organization. His bag was incredibly shallow with awkward floaters and simple layups, but it seemed like his spot was secure because his defense started to improve. He could lock down some legit scores and was one of the better playmakers on an awful Pistons team, but that just wasn't going to cut it if he couldn't develop even a simple jump shot. But over the years, even the good areas of his game turned into disappointments. He put in less and less effort on defense and would often run straight into double teams or allow lesser playmakers to do his own work for him. Add in recurring injuries and you've got a player who's not only a disappointment, but also a scapegoat for one of the worst teams in the league. He would end up getting waived by the Pistons and become Killian just needed a jump shot Hayes. He'd get cut from the French national team and have to settle for a 10-day contract with the Brooklyn Nets and some time with their G League affiliate. The kid is only 23, I mean that's way younger than most star players, so it feels weird to say he has played his way out of the league already because there's still some time for development to be had. He just needs to put in more effort than he has in recent years, develop a jump shot, and hone in on the small parts of the game if he wants to carve out even the smallest role in the NBA. Thank you guys for watching. If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and as always, I'll see you boys in the next one. Peace out.